And Nissan CEO Hiroto Saikawa certainly had little good to say about his predecessor, that is the chair. Blame was apportioned to the concentration of the power of the individual, and Saikawa focused on eliminating the negative aspects of the long regime of Mr. Ghosn.
Yeah, we wanted to talk more about this Nissan story with our panel tonight in Taking Stock. We're joined by John Winning, CEO of Winning Group and founder of the Digital CEO, Stephen Shearer. Welcome to you both. Plenty of intrigue in this story and plenty of questions being raised, and this is one that goes global and will go for some time, I reckon. Chris and I were talking about this in the newsroom today. Is this another isolated incident, you know, a bad player? Or do you guys see this as something more broad as part of this departure from business ethics that I feel like we're talking about more often? Stephen?
Well, look, we probably don't know enough facts to know exactly what happened yet, but certainly it's a high-profile dismissal. I mean, he's one of the most high-profile people in the auto industry. He has been for decades. So whatever happened had to be big to have such a spectacular move. Is it something bigger about ethics? You know, I think ethics are more under the spotlight now than ever before in business, in terms of leadership, in terms of how we handle things like data, things like you know, Facebook's issues, and so you know, it may be part of a bigger trend in that sense. But you know, he's a leader that obviously had his fingers in many pies and had access to lots of different ways of spending money, and perhaps he did things that he wasn't supposed to do. Most companies are pretty good at controlling and managing these things, so I think still we'll see these as fairly isolated incidents going forward.
Yeah, I agree much with Stephen. I think that it's probably too early and there's not enough information to see the details yet and make a judgment call on this case. However, I think that it really comes down to the individual, and I think if you put the right personality in the right situation, you could have a good thing, but if you put the wrong personality in a point of power, then obviously they can take advantage of that, and I think, you know, it's a case-by-case thing, not so much a
yeah, I think he was one of these leaders with a lot of power in his role.
Across multiple countries too, which
Exactly.
and companies.
And I think there's some questioning of, you know, was there too much concentration of power in one role, and did that lead to maybe a sense on his part that, you know, he was untouchable?
But I mean, how much is too much? This is a chair, this is a CEO. Naturally, they're two positions that have a lot of power over the company. I mean, John, you sort of said it's all about getting the right person into them, but I mean, what are the checks and balances that you think really need to be there?
Well, I mean, for example, business our size, we would say that 3 people need to sign off on the banking, and those 3 people can't be your CFO, your financial controller, and the next most senior accountant. You try and, you know, I mean, in a family business, it's quite easy. We like to have one family member, then either myself or another senior executive, and then someone that's a bit external to the accounts department, and maybe someone that the family trusts. If you're a large organisation, you just pick, you know, kind of 3 silos of the organisation that you might have sign off, and of course, little things, you need less checks and balances, and when you get to a point where it's going to, you know, start having a significant impact on your, I guess, what you would call serious a size of payments or something that needs approval, then you just have different checks and balances as you go up, and they get more serious and as they get larger.
Yeah. What about in bigger kind of global companies like you've worked with in the past?
Well,
like
similar sorts of sign-offs.
Is it similar?
On multiple points. I mean, we should note that he was arrested in Japan, so
so it was more than ethical issues. It was
misuse. I think there were other things that went
criminality.
And exactly.
It sounded like he was a bit of a god almost as well. You know, he's done so much for them. He's CEO and chairman, and then he was CEO for I think chairman for Mitsubishi, CEO for Renault as well. I mean, in the motor industry, it sounded like he had a lot of trust and he'd earned a lot of respect from a lot of people, and certainly when you earn a lot of trust and respect from the Japanese, you probably get a lot. However, they're a very loyal nation, and when you probably abuse that trust, you get what you got, and that's someone that's arrested with a 7-minute apology from the new CEO saying we're so sorry. So
that's such an interesting cultural
for a giant, I think, of the industry, and you saw the cultural
very proud culture.
I mean, 7 minutes apology for the CEO. You know, I can't imagine how that organization's feeling, because this was their leader. So it's a tough time for that business as well.
It is a bit of a problem when you have these. I guess we've had a period in our Australian corporate history as well of having these celebrity CEOs that, I mean, they can't possibly live up to the expectations all the time. You know, a couple have fallen on their sword. I mean, you know, I'm thinking of...
You think of Christopher Scaches and the Ellen Barnes of the world?
Exactly, and even kind of in more recent years, you know, Mark McInnes, and that was one of the first big, you know, harassment scandals. You know, when you're given that hero-like status and ultimately you're a business person And, you know, are we seeing it maybe
happens in business, happens in politics, right? When the power goes to your head, if you put the wrong person in the right position, then you could be setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, but I think part of the good of this is I think things like whistleblowers are now more protected than ever in corporate and in public sector, private sector, and so this is I think there was a whistleblower involved here, so maybe it's a good sign that whistleblowers are now being more protected, and therefore things are coming to light that should be coming to light.
Do you reckon? I mean, you guys come across big, influential people quite a bit. I mean, do you think that there are any red flags when you come across somebody that makes you kind of gives you some indication that all is not well?
Instinct.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I think instinct
Gut
for
feel,
sure.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, well, generally when I meet someone, I go, I don't trust that person. Really? And I know a friend of mine who runs an organisation, he says that actually his wife's a good judge. So he said sometimes he might trust someone impeccably, and they go to events and they do a lot of business together, and he puts more and more trust. And then maybe they're at an event outside of work and his wife meets them for the first time, and his wife might say, just be careful about that person. And he takes that and says, he trusts her instinct a lot, and says that, a lot of the time she sees stuff where his vision might be clouded by something.
See, this is interesting because this is why robots can never take over the world entirely, right? Because that human touch is, as you said, you reckon?
Your dog doesn't warm to it, therefore.
I just think there's something that, there's a human touch, you can't even say what it is. It's just that human interaction that you work out, who you want to do business with.
Well, that instinct is probably, your brain.
It's honed over many years, of course.
So artificial intelligence, maybe it has the conscious choice. What we call instinct, it makes a conscious decision based on data that
we could get there one day, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
No, not being taken over by robots, or
no.
okay.
Not yet.
Or maybe our kids will be taken over.
Maybe just newsreaders, I heard.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a recent.
Goodness, where it hurts.
We did a lengthy chat on that one, didn't we? I think we're safe for now. I reckon we're safe for now. We looked at this interesting research from Credit Suisse and Thomson Reuters, two guys, on family businesses. It was a pretty lengthy piece, but they've looked at family businesses versus non-family businesses in the US since 2006. But if you look across corporate history, some of the greatest giants of business have been family businesses. Even names like Walmart and Tesla, Dyson, there's heaps of them. We wanted to bring this up with you, obviously, John, as the head of a big family business here in Australia. What do you think about this research? Were you surprised to see any of this? They talked about the secret sauce and the outperformance.
Interesting, the three names you mentioned. I think Dyson and Tesla are quite different because really they've got one successor. It is maybe a family business, however it hasn't had to go through the generations, and I think there's one obvious advantage that non-family businesses have over family businesses, and that is that they have the entire population to pull from. When I hear of family business, I imagine handing over down the generations like our family business has, whereas Walmart, obviously, it's not necessarily one of the family members that are running Walmart anymore. And for me, it's a bit of a luck of the gene pool. And if you've only got 10 or 20 people, say, in that line of the family to pick from, you might have a slight disadvantage. You do have other advantages, like the fact that you grow up and you learn the values and you have a lot of pride within the company. However, it's definitely a much smaller pool to pick from, and there's a lot of challenges that come with a family business for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. Stephen, what do you think? We saw that graphic there. It was a pretty noticeable
it was a
there.
big gap in terms of it started. I think the data went back to 2006. Right. So you got to remember, there's if you started a different starting point, it may have different results.
Sure.
And I looked at that research, and it does talk about family businesses, but there's sort of two different types. There's the multi-generational ones like John's business, and then there's the ones that are still led by the founder who's living today, and I think they are different. Yeah. So you look at Tesla, or you look at Facebook, they are controlled and owned by their founders, even though they're on the public markets. But then there's businesses like Walmart or John's business that are multi-generational. They've been handed down over time. And I think the real question is, what happens over the long term with these businesses? Because, family businesses from hundreds of years ago, and many of them aren't here anymore either. And the founder-led businesses, I think, is the new phenomenon we're seeing today, where you're getting these really powerful, strong founders who manage to control the boards through super voting shares. Mark Zuckerberg does this with Facebook. Elon Musk does it with Tesla. They actually have more control than their economic control of the company. And so this leads to a situation where you've got one person who has a lot of control of that business. And that's great when things are going well, but sometimes when things aren't going so well, it doesn't give investors such a lever to be able to sort of pressure those CEOs or those chairmen to make changes. And so you know, it'll be interesting to see where this generation of founder-led businesses winds up in the next few years after we've gone through a few cycles of kind of boom and bust in the tech market, to see where they all wind up. And they get to, you know, a few generations from now, you know, will Mark Zuckerberg's grandson be running Facebook? You know, maybe he will be, but let's see where the business gets to then.
I think that's where the challenge comes in, if and when the next generation gets handed the reins and how they do with it.
Well, they say the first generation starts the business, second generation grows the business, third generation tends to stuff things up.
Oh, my dad handed it to me. I'm fourth generation. So
oh, there you go.
He's passed the ball. He's quite happy. He did that successfully, so now I've got all the pressure, I think.
Do you think, as a family business, you approach risk and investment differently than you would if you weren't
certainly
a family
investment we do, because we like to be in control, because and it's interesting, you know, I know this is one measure of success, but a lot of family businesses, certainly when they've been handed down through the generation, and the ones that I know, like our own, we don't measure success just financially. You know, we like to sleep at night. We like to know that our team are happy working within the business, that we've got a good culture. We like to know that our customers are happy, and that, and my dad always says, you know, he wants to walk down the street and be able to hold his head up high and know that if he meets someone that's a winning appliances customer, that they're going to have had a good experience. So they're probably the number one and two success factors to us. And then obviously the on-flow of that is hopefully that we make good money and the shareholders are also happy.
This is a fun fact, which is completely unrelated, but as John's speaking, I'm remembering that I was standing in a Winnings appliance store the day that I heard Steve Irwin died. There you go. And I always remember that, and I don't know, it just came to mind.
Association forever now.
But speaking of fun facts, actually I can link it in. Fun facts, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, he's laid out some of his, his secrets to success, perhaps. Apparently he gets up at 4 a.m. every day to read user comments for an hour. Do you think that would be a helpful way to approach the start of the day? Successful?
Well,
why do you think he'd choose that?
Well,
I'm just saying, just go through the trolls and, you know, awful way to start your day.
Sure maybe he has it filtered in some way, but I think it's a good habit to, if you're running a big consumer-facing business like Apple, is, you know, get a moment in your day when you get close to what customers are saying and doing. And, you know, the best way to do that for him is, you know, get up in the morning and, you know, get his head into what customers are saying. I think it's a great way to start the day.
Yeah, I mean, I talk personally with customers every other day of the week, probably. They get escalated to me. We talk to happy customers. I have friends still call me saying, look, I know, you know, that you've probably got a bit on, but can I buy a washing machine? And is there any chance you could give me a mate's rates type of thing?
Sure,
so I'm talking to customers pre-purchase, also the ones that get escalated post-purchase. And then as an organisation, we also have a customer experience team. This team aren't dealing with any pre-purchase or sales calls. They're just there to deal with our Net Promoter Score. So we use a system called Net Promoter Score to measure our customer engagement. And without getting technical, you know, it's basically they will contact all of the customer complaints that come out of the Net Promoter Score and call them all personally on the phone. And all of those, every single one gets listed into an email. They obviously deal with them one by one at that time and resolve the issue. But then it goes out to the business and the management. And every manager from every area of the business where the fault occurred has to reply back to the customer experience team with what they've done to resolve that, so that issue shouldn't happen again. We then obviously also look at the good stuff, and we've got 99 times more positive feedback than we do negative, and we have a thing called Feel Good Friday, which they take the best of the positives, or what we call our promoters in Net Promoter Score, and it goes in an email every Friday called Feel Good Friday. They call out the staff member that was involved in making that customer's day and wowing that customer, and that gets sent out to obviously boost everyone up into the weekend. So it's that's our way of keeping track of the customer.
Yeah, so staying close to the customer, that's the big part of that. What about other successful habits in your day?
Successful habits? I don't know. I try and avoid too many meetings. I seem to get dragged into a lot, but they're ad hoc. So something will come up, I'll grab, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 people. We're in an open plan office, so I'm accused quite frequently of yelling too loudly across the office. I'll stand up at my desk, I'll say, you know, Tony, Emma, you know, let's jump in a room, we've got to resolve this issue. So I think it's a good habit that we can jump on things straight away. Other businesses might say, oh, okay, let's resolve that. We'll set a meeting
3 p.m. Friday.
3 p.m. Friday, and we'll get in a room. We resolve it there, we make a decision, and we move on.
Nice insights,
Yeah, and I think that's a good fluid way, an open plan to run a business. Other good habits are, you know, the temptation is obviously to spend a lot of time on things like email or in your social feeds, or just, you know, seeing what's going on online. I try to be disciplined in how I spend that time, so I can sort of segment my brain and my time and my day, and I'm not just Not just spending time on a long tail of stuff that actually isn't that useful. So, for example, emails, I'll sort of say, okay, I'm going to do emails for 25, 30 minutes. That's it. Then I finish.
Yep.
And if there's emails I haven't done, I'll just make note of them. I'll come back later. Because otherwise, you can find you'll be an email for,
yes.
you know, it just goes on and on. And for me, I think in any business I'm in, I want to be involved with individuals, people. And so getting in front of people, talking to people, working with people, to me, is much more important than sitting in my emails and replying. Because I think that's how you really move a business forward. So finding ways to make that happen, I think, is a really good
I almost never do an email in the office unless it's flagged to me. So I mean, not everyone obviously is in a position, but in a senior exec level, you have an assistant. So my assistant looks through my email list, and she might say, you've got an urgent one, but unless I've got an urgent one that needs doing, it happens after 6 p.m.
Yeah, so cutting the clutter out of life and work and business and the rest. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys. Stephen, I appreciate you coming in again. And John, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.